Well, we've had this 2018 model KTM 500EXC-F for a couple of months now. We've only got it for sort of about 3 or 4 months, so we've been putting plenty of rides on the thing in all sorts of conditions. You know, first time we actually rode it was down late last year at the Transmoto 8 Hour down at Dargo, and we put a bunch of guys comparing this versus the 350 and the 250. As I say, about 16 hours on the bike. The reason we've got this as a project bike is because it's just this year taken over as KTM's largest selling model in the range, in their Enduro range. It sells about 800 units a year. It's taken over from the 350 as the biggest seller, and for a lot of good reasons. Yes, it's the most expensive bike in the fleet at $14,700, but they've made a huge benefit. Obviously, you know, this model very similar to the 17 model, which got the big generation upgrade with a new engine, new frame, new suspension, Explore suspension, all new bodywork, etc. Just a few tweaks this year to fork stanchions, etc., and a couple of the plastics. But what they've done in this new generation bike is make it so much more rideable. You know, there's more flywheel weight. So the engine still revs up really quickly, but it's super rideable, and that's been a real central focus for KTM, you know, when they designed this new model range. So I can understand why, aside from the fact that Australia is just power obsessed and we're all about V8s, I can also understand because of the rideability of this and the fact now it's probably because it's lost 5 kilos from that 2016 model, and it's so much more agile with a reduced gyroscopic effect that this is now probably closer to the 450 and 350 in terms of outright weight and actual feel on track than it ever has been before. And even though it's pumping out something like 62 horsepower, it's probably more rideable in terms of tractability than ever before. And that is, I guess, why the very first thing that I fitted to this bike was the, it comes standard on the Huskies, but the traction control, the map selector switch gives you 2 maps and then traction control on 4 of them. So that just adds to that rideability when conditions get really slick. So I thought we'd just sort of take you quickly through about what we've actually added to the bike and why, and then maybe lead in a little bit into what we intend to do with the thing over the next couple of months. So probably first and foremost, the most obvious thing is we put the FMF 4.1 Slip-On Muffler on the bike. It's $1,000. We put it on the scales a little bit earlier. It's about 0.5 kilos lighter, so it's not a lot, but the fact with any weight back there swinging off the arse of the bike, that's significant. Gives a little bit more throttle response. Haven't mucked around with the different mesh inserts yet, so we're going to have a muck around with that in the bush and sort of see if that materially changes the power. The other thing is the PHDS. This is just a personal preference for me. You don't notice a huge difference when you're riding, but obviously giving that elastomer just takes a little bit of the vibration and fatigue out of it. On long rides in particular, you notice it. So instead of rubber mounting the bars, which twist easily in a crash, you've got something which actually hard mounted bars, but actually just takes that vibration and fatigue out of your arms. When you go back to a bike that doesn't have it, you really notice that. The other thing is pretty much I do on all my bikes, I never understand why 90% of riders out there say they want more feel from their rear brake and that, they don't actually move to a solid rear brake disc. Aside from less pad wear, you get better feel. So everybody likes to be able to stomp on their rear brake, or, it's very difficult to be delicate on the rear brake and not lock the thing up. The other thing is a big one for me. The standard seat is not bad on the KTM. It's interesting, it's a little bit wider than the Husky equivalent this year, but when it gets wet, it gets really slippery, and I'm kind of surprised because KTM's put a lot of work into their seats in recent years, doing work with companies like Adidas to get the foam just right. So I think, at the moment they've just got the actual seat cover wrong. So we've actually fitted the factory Waive Seat on here. It's about the same, slightly narrower, but it's got this wave pattern back here, so it's a bit more grippier. And that's a really good thing, when conditions get muddy and wet. So that's all, I guess, what we've done from a performance point of view. From a protection point of view, obviously KTM likes to sell a whole lot of bits and pieces from their power parts. They can't put everything, adorn the bikes with everything when they come out standard, but there's a few things that I thought were really worth putting on, and that's the case guard, just to stop a rock getting flung from your chain through and destroying your brake master cylinder, sorry, your clutch master or your cases. Also just the little Teflon insert clutch and brake perches up here, just to make sure that those can actually slide in a crash rather than break the things off. Small things, those things I think are, what are they, $30 a pop, but they could save you hundreds of dollars worth of levers and master cylinders. A brake snake, just a standard thing really to stop your brake pedal getting sort of torn out. And then the brake disc protector, it's actually with a billet mount with a caliper as well. So that just, you know, the amount of times I actually look at that thing is actually absolutely obliterated. I reckon I've saved myself a lot of busted rear brake discs in the past, because we ride a lot of deep rutted tracks with sort of, you know, with rocks that jump out from the side of things. So having that shark fin there, I think is a major benefit. Other little things, you know, just from a protection point of view, just for when we're washing the bike, you're taking the air filter out, you know, putting a dust box cover, you know, over the air intake. Couple of little caps also that fit on the fuel hose on the brake system. That's where most people get grit into their fuel injection system, so it's worth doing that when you take the tank off. And then just a little bit of bling. You know, the white handguards, like, kind of cool, but I think it actually ties it in with the bike really nicely just to have those things. So from here we're going to do a little bit of work on the suspension. You know, compared to its predecessor, the open cartridge fork, I have noticed that this new Explore fork, when I went back to back with the 2016 model, is not quite as plush. Much better bottoming resistance. Ended up running a little bit more compression clicker to sit it up in a stroke, low speed, and that worked a bit better, but still a little bit more work I think on the fork. Shock, haven't been really able to fault it. What we have done is really focus on getting the static and rider sag set up right. So 35mm static sag and 110 rider sag. That seems to be something that everybody's going for, and it's got a really good combination of chassis balance and keeps the thing steering well. So stay tuned. We're going to do a little bit of work on those other items, and we'll keep you updated in the next month or so.